Welcome to the ET Enthusiast. We have a great episode for you today. This is our second guest who actually appears in the film E.T. the Extra-Terrestrial. If you've been watching or listening to the show, then you know in our first episode, we spoke to Robert McNaughton, who plays Michael, Elliot's older brother. And if you've seen E.T., if you're watching this, I assume you have, I would hope so, then you know that Michael has a friend group. And without this friend group, I don't know that ET would have made it home. And today we are talking to somebody who is part of that friend group, Mr. Sean Frye. How's it going, Sean?
It's going well. Thanks for asking. I'm real excited to be here. I never get tired of ET.
Hey, that's good to hear. That it seems like this is like the one movie where like anybody who was a part of it is excited to talk about it from what I've seen so far.
Oh, yeah. Well, and seen probably over the years, because there's lots of cast members out there sharing on, if they're doing something on a press junket, if Dee's working or whatever, there's those questions always come up. And I don't think I've ever heard a pat type of answer to them. It's always something fresh, a fresh perspective maybe on the same stuff. But we always dig up new stuff.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm noticing, because it's like after 40 years, you think they would have covered it all, but I know there's a new book coming out with even more photos that have never been seen. There's all sorts of stuff, and then just from talking to people, I dig up stuff that I'm like, I've never heard these stories before, so it's always exciting.
Yeah, I did an article for Sci-Fi that came out concurrent with the 40th anniversary premiere at the Chinese Theater.
Yeah.
And I just happened to remember so many things came to me. And it really turned out to be a very nice interview, because there were some things in there that I had forgotten, that he had no idea about. And it was a hefty article, came out at a nice time with the 40th. And so, yeah, I was jazzed. I'm always jazzed to have my brain picked about ET.
That's great to hear. That's what we're gonna do today. And it's funny that you mentioned the 40th anniversary. I was actually gonna start with that because when I spoke to Robert, that 40th anniversary premiere hadn't happened yet. So you're the first person that I can talk to who was actually there and tell us how it was that they did a big premiere.
Great. I'm sure Robert at the time was real excited to be there, although he makes appearances internationally with Dee and Henry, which is fantastic. But really, on a personal level, you go to the Chinese theater for a premiere and it's like you've arrived. I'm not that guy, that looks for opportunities to shine and to arrive, and to seek, more and more prestigious venues. But I have to admit, it was a personal bucket list item. It was so great seeing everybody. I hadn't seen anybody in 40 years. I've been in pen pal relationship with Robert and his wife Bianca. But in terms of like KC, they found Casey Martell, I don't know how, and told me he was going to be there. And that, because he hasn't been too involved in any sort of publicity at all.
Right.
Podcasts, interviews and stuff. So I was thrilled for that. Thrilled for the cast, thrilled for the venue, thrilled for the red carpet opportunities to share, and thrilled to hear Stephen, to say hi to Stephen, and to hear his juicy particulars from making the movie right before it showed on IMAX. So it was once in a lifetime. What can I say?
It looked incredible, and I was so glad that they had you there and Casey and Matt Demerit, and they had everybody there, which was great, because I think when they first announced it, they were like, "Oh, Henry Thomas and Drew Barrymore," and then they ended up being the two that couldn't be there. And
Yeah,
I was just glad that everybody was involved though, because I was like,
yeah.
"Oh, it'd be sad to see a 40th anniversary without
Some
everybody."
kind of
So,
reunion. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean, Drew is, of course, she's so busy and she's got kids, and I totally get that.
yeah,
Um, and so Kathleen Kennedy was also supposed to be there,
right.
producer, just, I can't say enough about her. What can I say? But she was supposed to be there. She wasn't able to make it. But Stephen was there. Um, our editor was there.
Wow.
Cast members were there. Matthew Demerit, who played E.T. in the costume in some of the funniest scenes,
Oh yeah,
he was there. And we got to bring our partners, and there was lots of photo ops and everything. So, but seeing it on IMAX was one thing. And
yeah.
two, I'm such a sap that I cry every time I see it.
That says a lot when you were there when it happened, and it can still affect you like that. That's
Yes,
that's
yes.
pretty wild. Oh,
Yeah.
what was it like
I mean,
seeing
my emotions are very much at the surface anyway, but forget it. With watching ET,
yeah,
I'm just like every other audience member.
yeah, every time I watch it, I'm like, well, I'm doing okay. I'm not crying. I've seen it enough. I'll be fine. And by the end, no. we,
Just a
we
little,
yeah.
you know.
We just saw it in IMAX as well, because I know you guys that was the first big IMAX screening, and then
Yeah,
they had it playing for about a week earlier this month. And
right.
wow, it's crazy to see, because I feel like I don't know about you, but I noticed things that I'd never noticed before. Even as many times as I've seen the movie, I was like, oh my gosh, like that the scene in the beginning where they're like showing the spaceship and all the plants in there. There's like a
Yeah,
tree with a face and it's breathing, and you're like, oh, I've
yeah.
never noticed this before.
Yeah. You get, I mean, number one, you get everyone's pores because it's so huge. You can
Yeah,
see every hair growing out of everywhere. But that's great. It's tremendous. Close-ups take on a whole new meaning.
yeah,
Um, and like you said, with the expansive detail, there are things. And that's kind of one of the fascinating things about the movie is there are things to discover that you don't see the first, second, or third time. Or
yeah,
in our case, probably the dozenth time.
yeah,
But it's fun. It's fun, and it's so iconic, especially in the beginning. Not in the ship, but in the discovery in the shed.
yeah,
So iconic. I was watching a music video the other day by The Weeknd, and they have a series of videos as part of their album. And one of the songs is, I mean, I should say the video is something going on in the shed. The girl hears it from the house. She gets the flashlight. She goes towards the shed. Shed looks exactly the same, but it's a kid instead of ET.
right.
But it just shows you how iconic that a video that virtually came out yesterday is using those iconic images.
Yeah, and it's not just it. There's some that it's like the easy references, like a bike over the moon, and that's
Right.
simple, or someone in a basket. But it's gotten to the point where even like these little
Sequences.
moments are
Yeah,
so like ingrained in everyone's memory, and you can
right,
do a callback like that, and then you're
right.
there.
And it's when, of course, that's the phenomenon of the movie too, is that it's so generational. It's unreal how
Yeah,
generational.
yeah, because like
I
I
just took my 4-year-old and my dad took me, and it's like
yep,
3 or 4
yeah.
generations. Are you kidding me?
That's what's so fun about it. I've seen it in theaters a few times. This was obviously the first time it was in IMAX, but every now and then a theater will do like a screening, and every time without fail, there's always like a parent or a grandparent
Yeah,
bringing their little one there to see it for
yeah,
the first time. And
yeah.
you see the reaction. You see the same reaction that I had when I saw it for the first
Yeah,
time, where like
unreal.
they cry, but it's
Oh
not
yeah,
like it's just different. Like
yeah.
yeah, I don't think a movie had ever affected me in that way until I watched that in like second
Yeah,
grade.
and it was, yeah, I was, oh God, well, you were in second grade, I was 14-ish. So I mean, it was just fun. It was all so much, when it opened up, because I'm sure you've heard we thought this was going to be a relatively innocuous little kids film. And then it opens and it stays #1 for 16 weeks.
Yeah, that's unheard of now. It
That's
doesn't
unheard
happen
of.
anymore.
I mean, sure, it's been outdone financially, not at the time, but
Mhm.
outdone financially. I think by Titanic is the hair's breadth. Um,
Yeah,
but it's just phenomenal, all of the iconic moments in that film.
yeah. Rewinding a little bit to when you first became a part of it, how did you get into acting as a kid, and then how did you end up in ET? How did you
Yeah.
get the audition, get in there?
Well, my background is I started acting when I was about 6, and primarily in commercials, of course. Well, not of course, but oftentimes that's where folks begin or began at the time as a child actor.
Right.
Um, then got into a lot of television work, movies of the week, several movies of the week, appearances on sitcoms and things like that. So in doing that, as you grow up, I don't want to say it becomes routine. In fact, in the big book recently, I said, and I hope it came across okay, but I said that some of the interviews are remarkably unremarkable, in the sense that you would think it would be this like profoundly magical moment, which turns out to be a great project, but it doesn't have that magic that people sometimes are expecting. Like, people's heads are exploding because they're so amazing on their first interview or whatever. So point being, you get used to the interview process. So when ET came up, I mean, you're given the project in the sense that what it is, maybe who's directing it, very little on the front end. So certainly there was some excitement there, considering who was attached to the film. But
Yeah.
I figured there's going to be so much competition for a film like this with that director, not thinking it was going to be huge. So I just took it in stride. I came straight from school. I was a funky kind of bohemian dresser and just came straight from school. The scenario was, I mean, it was just off the cuff because they had to get something similar. So we were in a like 4-chair kind of bus car situation, and we were supposed to be traveling to the moon to take the man from the moon back to the moon, or to get the man from the moon, or whatever. And this was maybe like the beginnings of the van
Yeah, I
sequencing
was
or
gonna say that
something.
kind of sounds like that a little
Kind
bit.
of, yeah, doesn't it? Yeah,
Hmm.
that just occurred to me. So yeah, so there was that, and um, oh, in fact, I think that in the second audition, Drew was in there.
Oh wow.
Um, so in the callback, I think Drew was in the callback, but I think she may have been at that point very close to getting it. And sometimes they intermingle folks that are more sure bets, but they're not sure about other bets, and they want to see chemistry. And it
Yeah.
can be very measured, the way they do it. And so that was it. First call, second call, got the information, was thrilled, jumped in the backyard,
Wow.
almost broke my ankle from excitement. Uh, and then from then on, we had to sign an NDA for parts of the script that, we had to be careful about, because we were only given it in pieces. And
Yeah.
that's a long story. We saw pieces as it unfolded. So we were like being told the story sort of like the audience. There was a handful that knew everything from the beginning because they had to do a lot of rehearsals. And I
Right.
think that was mainly Henry, Robert, and Dee. And perhaps Drew. So they had to know everything. But the tertiary and secondary cast members were eased into the story.
Was Spielberg present at your auditions, or?
Yes.
Oh,
Both.
nice. Okay.
Both.
How
Yeah.
how
Both.
was that the first time meeting Steven Spielberg? Are you like?
Well, yeah, I mean, it was certainly exciting. I was certainly impressed. I had worked with a lot of good directors in the past. Couple of films that I did, and a slew of very, very good television directors from projects that I'd worked on. So I was acclimated to sort of not being overwhelmed by luminaries like
Mhm.
Stephen. But I'm not going to deny the excitement and the potential for working with him was tremendous.
Yeah, I just can't imagine, even especially at that age. I feel like I'd be just a bundle of nerves.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, since then, for somebody like older than us, let's say 6 years old or whatever, there's a whole slew of stuff that, or older teenagers, that of his body of work. When we did E.T., yes, he was well known. He had done Close Encounters and he had
Mhm.
done Jaws.
Right.
Now, he had done other stuff, but that was basically it. So you can't say that, oh my God, I was going in for the director of, bad example, but Schindler's List or
Yeah.
all of these huge, huge films since.
Yeah.
So we were dealing with a couple of huge ones that made it very impressive, but not like, whoa,
Right.
wow,
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of like, I can't think of a good example, but like when a director has a few really good films, and then
under their belt.
yeah, and
Yeah,
then but little did you know, I guess, that this would be the one that like sent it over the moon, so to say.
yeah, yeah. It really did send him in quite a trajectory.
Yeah.
And yeah, I could be wrong, but I personally think that it's his favorite film.
I kind of get that vibe, and maybe you've had like some interactions like at the recent premiere or anything, but anytime I see like an interview with him, it seems like he really lights up and has kind of
Yes.
a genuine emotional bond with this movie, more so than others maybe.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think, not to get too personal, but I think that it resonates so deeply for him, being from a home of divorce
Hmm.
and a lot of feelings, I think, that are imbued into Henry that come from a lot of his experiences or
Hmm.
his experiences of his experiences as
Yeah.
they sort of translated onto the page.
Yeah, like it's such a big epic movie in scope, but the story at the center is very like personal, which
Yes,
is really, I think, what makes it what it is, because
it
it's
is
yeah. um
very
so
true.
so when you were filming, I know they filmed most of everything in sequence, which is unheard of for most movies.
Mhm.
And then actually, when I was looking on IMDb, they have quotes for Steve, your character, and
Yeah.
I don't know that this is, I think this is accurate. You had the first line in the entire film.
Uh, well,
Because
now let's see. You could be correct because the first talking is at the table, right?
there's a lot of silence and just score when we've seen ET get left behind, and then
Right.
we come to the table, and there's a lot of talking over each other in that scene. But I think, according to IMDb, the very first line is yours.
No kidding. Something, well, no doubt having something to do with being the dungeon master.
Yeah.
Um, or, well, that, you know, that whole story about Dungeon Master and it didn't get used and whatever. So
Oh yeah,
whatever,
you're
whatever the equivalent of Dungeon Master would have been in that game is probably why I had the first one.
yeah. Did you were you into Dungeons and Dragons when you were a kid before ET?
Well, I don't know how far back D&D goes. I was aware of it in 81, barely. And so I knew sort of like it was a fantasy strategic kind of game of strategy and fantasy. And God, now I'm not a D&D person, so there may be D&D people coming out of the woodwork saying, you know what, it's not strategy and it's not fantasy, okay? But anyway,
I don't think anyone's
so,
gonna call you on those. I think
no, okay,
that's fairly
okay,
accurate.
okay, good, good. So I was, you know, what what I remember is probably something that you've heard before, which is that they wanted to use the game more verbatim for the film,
Oh, okay.
and D&D did not want that.
Aha. I don't think I realized that because I thought that it was always I
Now,
thought it was a proven like a fact that you guys are playing D&D, but I guess they never
they never,
specifically
yeah.
say that.
Now, anyone out there that wants to correct me, because I remember a lot of strange details, and most of them are founded in reality, at least when it comes to ET. So I recall that there was some disconnect between using the actual game itself and using a mock-up of the game. And it had something to do with D&D not approving it or wanting to or something
Interesting.
like that. And similarly with Reese's Pieces.
Right, because they wanted M&Ms
They
at
wanted
first.
M&Ms and M&Ms thought, you know, and the rest is
That's
history.
yeah, that's the iconic moments in fumbling fumbling
Let's
the bag, as they say.
let's just say that person may have been put out of a job after that.
Yeah, I would think so. Um, did you get into any not even just D&D, but any kind of shenanigans and games with Robert and the guys during
Um,
filming?
well, you know, yeah, I mean, we would kid around about the stunts and of course everyone kidded around about the fact that I was well, not kidded me, but I was the worst of all the bike riders.
Oh no.
Um, I really, I have to tell you, I had not been on a bike for quite some time. And I was not accustomed to riding bikes standing up and like at all. So, so the first time we come around the corner for the first shot, action shot, everybody is standing up on their bikes riding, and I'm sitting. And Steven turns and he says, Sean, you're riding that bike like my grandma. You have to stand up. And so I thought, okay, you get what you get. And I wiped out at least once.
Oh no.
And thank God wardrobe was there to, you know, for a full change and thank God it was a brief shot. It was just sort of us coming around the corner, but being seen enough that it had to be us. And then sort of shooting it down a little bit and shooting it down the road a little bit is what got me, because I was standing up and and my legs turned to jello by the end of that day, because they did virtually all the bikes in one day.
Wow.
For us, maybe a couple, but I remember one. And then a van went and picked us up, I should say, at the end of the shooting line. And I literally almost collapsed. My legs were so exhausted. And if you notice, not to go on and on, but if you notice the scene where everybody is approaching the cop cars and then take off, you'll see that I'm out of shot. If you look closely in IMAX, you'll see that I'm down a ways because I couldn't keep up.
Oh no.
So they sort of cheated a little bit off to the right, so it didn't look like so odd that I wasn't keeping up. So that's the secret.
That's did you know you're gonna have to be riding bikes when you took the job?
Well, not like that. No,
Yeah.
no, not like that.
No, I was gonna say that's a little extreme.
No, it wouldn't have been a deal breaker, God knows. But
Oh yeah.
yeah,
I love you guys' reactions, especially you and the other Michael's friends
yeah,
when you start floating. Was that I'm gonna sound dumb, but that's not, was green screen a thing then? I don't
yeah,
so
yeah.
you
The
guys were in front
way,
of green screens.
yeah, this is totally different than it is nowadays, as we all know. The going up in the sky briefly, because I could go on, because this was at Industrial Light and Magic, and I got to see so much up there and do
Yeah.
so much. It was just amazing. But they built these platforms that were movable, and then they would have a stationary bike on top of the movable platform. And then you got on the bike if it wasn't the doll, because the doll would do a lot of other stuff.
Yeah, I've seen pictures of the dolls. Pretty
Yeah,
big dolls too. Like
yeah, about yay high or something
yeah.
like that. And so it was moving the platform while we're going up and down, but it had to look like we were going through the trees. So the
Right.
green screen was in back of everything to fill in the forest, and the trees were on tracks. So instead of
Oh my.
us flying, the trees were pulled backwards to create the theory, the
Wow.
relative theory, as it were, that we were going forwards instead of the trees going backwards.
I don't think I ever knew that. I knew about the dolls, but I don't know that I've ever seen photos of behind the scenes of you guys
Yep,
filming the actual flying. So
yep.
that's kind of incredible.
I've seen ones on the platform, at least with just the bike and them working on getting the platform
Mm.
to do that. But the trees on the tracks and stuff, that's an unknown.
That's pretty wild. Hopefully not getting hit by any branches as they
Well,
come
yeah,
across.
thankfully they were far enough away that we had some wiggle room, because who knows how we would have reacted. I went back, some guys went up, some guys went to the
Yeah.
side.
So that's a wow, yeah, that the industrial light and magic stuff is it's very very interesting just because just the practical effects used in this movie are like
Yeah.
they still haven't been topped, honestly.
No, no, it's amazing. They used matte, as far as I know. They use glass matte to create, to create more expansive backgrounds by putting it in front of the camera and making it look like it's
Right.
out there. I believe that that's an old tactic. I
Yeah.
mean, technique, I should say. But yeah, what they did is primitive compared to what they do now.
Yeah. Well, it's in some ways, yeah, and then in some ways I feel like I wish they would do more like that nowadays. Nowadays, so much CGI, which
Yeah.
can sometimes be good for certain things. And then I don't know, that just building a whole do you remember the first time that you saw the ET animatronic in person?
Yeah. Well, the first time I saw it was during that wipeout bike scene. They had him wrapped in the thing. So all I saw
Right.
was the face. And only because I was in close proximity to it, having biking around it and whatever, having to bike around it. So I saw the face. But every time it would stop and ET would not be being filmed,
Mhm.
was not being filmed, they would cover it, because you never knew. and they did not want it leaked, and it was not leaked, which to its credit. So it was covered up a lot. Then when I got to see the full Monty of the full animatronic, everything, it was mind-blowing, because you had like a dozen people all sitting around this ET.
Yeah.
But these two guys were in charge of the eyebrows, and this gal was in
Right.
charge of the lips, and this guy was in charge of the nostrils, and this gal was in charge of the teeth, or whatever.
Yeah.
And to see all that symbiosis, and just what he would do is just let them go. And he would just film lots of reaction and lots of playing around with this and playing with that and going and looking here, and just pick the best pieces.
Yeah. I was gonna say, was that the first time you saw the animatronic? That wasn't on camera, was it? Because I know you guys are
No.
some of the last to see ET
Yeah.
when they
Yeah,
open
no,
up in that truck.
I snuck in. Well, it was high security set, as I'm sure Robert has told you, very high
Right.
security. But we were allowed to be a little fluid between the two studios, stages, because it was on stage was primarily two stages. One was the house and one was the ship.
Nice.
So you could be fluid in between the two if you had your badge and everything. And sometimes I would just want to watch.
Yeah.
And it was fascinating to see. Who wouldn't?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I can't even imagine. Like I'd be the same way. Kind of like I know Spielberg was the same way, sneaking into old Hitchcock sets, watching him. So that's
Isn't that amazing? Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's wild. Did who did you kind of buddy up with on set? Like who were you kind of close with?
Of all people, Drew, because
Wow.
Drew's father and mother loosely knew family members of mine, John Barrymore,
Mhm.
and loosely within the same circle. So we sort of kind of knew each other, and then we were on the film together, and we lived very close to each other in West Hollywood.
Oh,
So
gotcha.
we carpooled.
Huh.
So Drew and I got to spend a lot of mornings together on the way to work, sometimes on the way back. And I was just very close with, I had a very close affection for her. I loved everybody. I mean, the guys and us got along like famously, not a sideways glance ever on anything. But Drew, how could you not,
She's just the best in that movie. Every time you watch it, you're like, oh, I guess this is like the funniest performance anyone has ever done. Even still, it's just so
Can
good.
you imagine anyone else doing that part?
Not
No.
at all. um, since you spend a lot of time with her, what is it like carpooling like that? Because I know people often are like, oh, they thought ET was real, and what would she talk about ET like? Oh, you can't believe what ET did today, like.
Well, not necessarily, because only because, we would chat and talk and, be excited about going to work and the movie and everything. But so we were tight in that way. But this was, you have to remember, on the way to work, which is usually very early. So she was pretty groggy. In fact, sometimes she was asleep in the back seat, when who can blame the poor child?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
And then at the end of the day, it was rough. We had different schedules. Frequently, we would not go back to West Hollywood together, because she would be required much more than I was on the set. So, and it was quite a ways in Culver City from West Hollywood. Yeah. So, but she was just her. She was just magical.
Oh yeah. did you guys get any opportunity to riff at all? Because I know Melissa Matheson kind of just nails it with just how kids talk. But I mean, you guys are around that dinner table for so long, and I know there's other things that probably didn't even make it into the movie. But did you guys get to kind of improv at all like that?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it was linear in the sense that there were lines that we had to hit on in order, like Steve, can I play now, Steve, and whatever, and I would respond. So those key elements were on the script. But because, and this is a little lofty, I don't know what Stephen would think about it, but Howard Hawks was a very famous old director, and he was famous for having dialogue on top of each other. So you were constantly catching Cary Grant and Rosalind Russell in His Girl Friday, and you're trying to catch all of these brilliant pieces of dialogue, but they're going over each other. Not that there's any similarity there, but I think it's loosely the same concept in that in real life, people talk over each other. Not always if you're having a conversation, but if you have 5 people in the same room, you can't have pregnant pauses, it's all going on. So I think we were encouraged to fill in gaps, to keep it moving, talking, laughing, point this out, point that out, take a drink, grab the phone, whatever it was. So I would say it was maybe a 50-50 blend of improv and scripted.
Nice. That's another scene where I just like notice things, and I feel like I need to go and watch it with subtitles one of these days, because it's like you said, rapid fire. And this time I noticed, I don't think it's you, but somebody tries to touch Dee Wallace's butt, and Michael kind of stops them. And
I think that made it in there though, didn't it?
Yeah, that's in there. And I had just never, I don't know that I'd ever noticed it until seeing it in IMAX, and I was like, these guys are just something else.
Right. You stay here, Mom, we'll check it out.
Yeah. And that's another thing
that's one of my favorite of Robert's lines.
I love that too, because he really nails like how you act with your friends versus how you act with your siblings. Yeah. Because you guys are, and you actually are probably the nicest of the friends, because you even say to Elliot that, oh yeah, you're in, you can play. But
exactly. Figure out your strategy, you're up next.
Yeah. It's just funny to see like taunting bully brother versus like, okay, we actually are kind of friends when no one's around.
There's one scene where I'm not so nice, which somebody sent me a picture of it the other day, and I thought, well, this is probably the only time I'm not so nice or I'm teasing, is the scene when we're getting onto the school bus and we're waiting for the school bus, and I go up into Henry's face and I sort of say, did he come back?
Yeah.
So that was kind of sarcastic, but
a little snotty.
I think I'm a pretty nice guy aside from that snotty remark.
I know. I need to get KC so I can figure out what a Sinus Supremus is. I still have no idea. Do you have any idea?
No, and I think that's a running mystery I've heard before. What is that?
Yeah, I've heard people speculate that it's D&D related. I don't know if that's true, because I think you can roll for charisma in D&D, so seeing 0 charisma maybe is D&D related, but Sinus Supremus, no idea. But it sticks in my head.
It could have been a Mathesonism.
Yeah, I'm like, dang, she would have been the only person who would know for sure.
Maybe she was the only person to ever know.
Did you get to keep anything or take anything with you after filming wraps?
The bane of my existence. I didn't say anything. I saved my ID card for a
Oh
while
yeah.
and then I lost it. I didn't know. It didn't occur to me to keep call sheets, scripts, revisions,
Yeah.
inserts, um,
Man.
anything. It just
Wow.
never occurred to me. There was no internet. There was no idea that this may be valuable someday because
Yeah.
there were no, there were like auction houses and collectible
Yeah.
places, but it just never occurred to me as a memento. I ended up with nothing.
It was very different back then because I know I don't know that this was the case with ET, but with a lot of movies back then and even before, like when a thing was over, they're like, all right, throw the sets away,
Right,
throw everything in the literal
right,
garbage. And you're like,
right.
oh my gosh, like I can't think of an example, but you'll find like, oh, what happened to this from this movie? And you're like, oh,
Yeah,
they didn't think to keep it. They just dumped
yeah,
it
no.
on to the next one.
Especially at the time, it's like maybe nowadays they would think to either save or swipe certain things.
Yeah.
Um, but like I said, maybe to many of us, it just, unless it meant something personally to you that you wanted to show your kids or whatever. But we didn't even know that this was going to be such a monumental landmark film.
Yeah.
So it just really seemed like any old script that we had been dealing with in our short-lived career up until that point. Because Casey started early, I started early. I
Right.
don't believe Tom started early. Drew was in Altered States before she was in ET, so she started mega early.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah. Casey and I think started the earliest, unless you count Drew at the time.
Yeah. Wow. Do you have anything or have you gotten into collecting like obviously I'm a bit of a hoarder, but have you picked up any ET items just off the shelf anywhere?
No, I think somebody, I don't know how we ended up with this. I think somebody sent it to me, and and I don't know, I mean, values or anything.
Right.
And it's not necessarily sentimental. I think I'm on one of the cards, but it's
Yeah.
that clear plastic deck of all of the ET trading cards. And then at the
Yeah.
bottom, there's all the stickers and
Uh-huh.
inserts and everything. And that's a complete set. So
That's
I have
great.
that.
That's great. Yeah. Because I was trying to think about it before we talked. I was like, is there any Steve merchandise? Because there's
No,
no Steve action figures, but yeah,
no.
probably show up on a maybe on a lunchbox, maybe on definitely trading cards.
What's weird is there's the difference between residuals and royalties, and they're both the same because they both have to do with you. This is earnings that do not have to do with labor. You are
Right.
not laboring right now for those earnings. There's nothing you can do about those earnings, even if you didn't want those earnings. But there's residuals and there's royalties. Now, the
Uh-huh.
folks that got the dolls that were made into this, that have this on the lunch boxes and the whatever.
Yeah.
Those are all royalties. And for the leads, those royalties would be substantial.
Uh-huh.
Mine are maybe like $5 a year, $11 a year, and fully accounted for, as low as they are. But they're in weird places like Germany, Buenos Aires,
Wow.
and so I think they're probably trading cards or something with my likeness that's rare, because there's
Yeah,
no,
that's
as you said, there's no dolls, there's no, most of the stuff, there's none of the kids.
yeah, that's interesting too, because a lot of it, I mean, now there's more because the 40th anniversary, they're kind of pumping it out in the stores again. But it's
Right.
interesting to be getting royalties from it when there's not really anything first to market anymore. So now I'm like, what's going on in Germany?
Well, that's, yeah, you and me both. I've always wondered, well, wait a minute. if I'm getting 11 cents from South America, what on earth could it possibly be? A
Yeah.
stick of gum? I don't, a cartoon inside of a bazooka gun?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know.
I'm assuming I don't want to make you go into detail, but residuals for the movie itself got to be a little better than that. And it's something I never thought about before. But does that change year to year based on like, oh, now it was in IMAX? Is that different?
No, residuals, it's a very strange formula that I'm not, fully aware of. I don't think anyone's fully aware of unless we work with the union on how that formula works.
Yeah.
But they don't increase in time. They decrease, and it has nothing to do with how many people saw the movie, the fact that it went to IMAX,
Wow.
how many people bought the movie, how, a lot of people think, wow, you're rich because this movie made so much money, but that's not how it works. And
Yeah.
all of the residuals are fixed. So in other words, as I understand it, in this film, there was a lot of equity in terms of residuals because everyone had the same formula. So as far as I know, let's say somebody with more lines versus less lines still may have gotten the same amount of residuals based on the formula.
Wow.
So nobody, to just be straightforward with everybody, none of the cast members got rich off this film.
Oh yeah. No,
It,
I didn't assume that for
no,
sure, but
no, not to say
just
you
interesting.
implied that, but
No, no,
no.
no. It's just interesting to see how it works. I know there's a restaurant I want to say in LA where if you bring your residual check, that's like the
Oh,
smallest
yeah.
amount, you get a free
It's
drink or something.
It's called Residuals. I don't know
Yeah,
if it's still there, but it's a pub called Residuals. And if you bring a residual check less than $1, and I've had a residual check for 1 penny once
wow.
from Emergency, because I did an episode of Emergency in like 73 or something, and
Oh
it was
wow,
like a penny. But it's true. And apparently if you bring a residual check less than $1, you get a drink.
that's kind of fun.
Yeah,
I know
probably a well drink or a beer or something, but who
yeah,
cares?
yeah. So that's fun. How was uh how was life different after ET came out? Like, what is going back to school like after you've been in like the biggest movie that's come out in forever?
Well, yeah, I mean, it was interesting. It wasn't, it's funny that the interest, and I could be wrong, but the interest seems to have grown over time. In other words, when it first came out, yes, I was recognized. Uh, I wasn't inundated with autograph seekers, Uh, I've always been that face that looks familiar to you. And I think I could be wrong, but that may be part of it, is that it's ingrained in their mind that they can't quite put where my face that they've seen before. So there was not there I wasn't inundated with anything. The school I went to, not too impressed at all. But as people got older and appreciated it more, and then turned it over to their children to appreciate, the swell of interest from the first and second generation is, I don't know, it just seems to have increased. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like there's a real nostalgia boom because I guess people were always nostalgic for things, but now it's like, oh, you guys
Yeah.
like this one random prop from this really obscure thing? All right, we're gonna make an exact replica of it. Don't you want to buy it?
Right, right. Exactly. Yeah. I remember my dad played a stormtrooper in a Burger
Ah,
King commercial, which dates me. And I remember the stormtroopers kept having to throw their rubber laser guns into a box for the prop master. They were just solid rubber. It was nothing. But I
yeah.
remember thinking, God, one of those rubber guns
Oh, yeah.
now
Oh, for sure. Even just being in a Burger King commercial, like
Yeah,
it would be
you could
it,
go on the circuit, right? For having
yeah.
been in a
Yeah. Have you done any of the conventions and that sort of thing? I know some of the
no,
guys. No. Oh, okay.
no, I don't.
Is it something you think you
Everybody,
would do?
I could if I wanted to, but it's not my thing. I just the traveling
Yeah.
is a little difficult on me. The time away is a little difficult on me. And but hey, more power to those that do work the circuit, or the conventions, I should say. Because not only are they lucrative, which I assume that they are, but you get such tremendous interaction with fans, which has always been my favorite part of it, is interacting with fans. Um, but it's just not for me. It's just not for me right now. But like I said, I know, a lot of cast members, well, not a lot, but considering the size of the cast,
Yeah.
do go on international convention circuits. And hey, that must be exciting.
Yeah. It definitely seems like its own kind of world. It's
Yeah.
definitely get some stories there. I know Casey Martell, he's starting to do them, which I was
Yes.
surprised because
Yes. He's done one, I believe, and I think he has another one slated coming up. And he and I stay in touch, so that's exciting to
nice.
hear how he's enjoying those.
Nice. That I'm still just so glad that you guys all got back together for
Oh yeah.
that 40th, because that um was there any interactions there that were notable, like with Steven or with anybody,
Well,
where you're just like, wow, look at us.
yeah, I mean, I didn't get a picture with Steven, but I'm not a big selfie person, so it was no big deal. He was walking slowly by, and I said, "Hello, Steven." And he said, "Hello." And I said, "It's very good to see you after all these years." And I shook his hand. And then, he had an entourage, and the,
Yeah,
the photo ops were kind of all over the map. It was,
right.
some of them were after, a couple were before, and it was sort of just catch as catch can. So, but the interpersonal stuff between everybody outside of the photo ops was really, really rewarding.
Yeah, I bet that's awesome. What has your relationship with the movie been like? Like, did it change at all, like over the years? Like, were you ever uh like, because I know you don't think about it every day. It's something that you did, and then you move on
Right.
to the next thing. But has it ever kind of like shown up or in your life in weird ways where you're like, oh wow, okay, that's me.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes, I mean, it's usually when you have interaction with fans that it really resonates how deeply this has affected people. Um, and then the other thing that occurs to you, not in some, big hoo-ha kind of way, but it is indelible, iconic, and forever. And it's in the Library of Congress.
Yeah,
It's up there with the Wizard of Oz. So it's kind of not weird, but odd to think that 1,000 years from now, if we're, God willing, still on this planet,
yeah,
or 100 or 500 or 200 years from now, I will be living in perpetuity by having been in that film. So that's a little interesting.
yeah. It is weird to think about that. That's like a lasting
Yeah,
thing. Like
yeah.
it it's stood the test of time, and it
It's
always will.
never going away. It's never going away.
Yeah. Wow. Um, have you done any this is just a goofy question I always like to bring up because I'm a big theme park guy. Have you been on the ET ride at Universal Studios?
I have actually. I thought you were going to say like a roller
Nice.
coaster because I that would give me a heart attack. I can't stand roller coasters, but I was on the ride. It was fascinating. I especially like when it goes through the ship and you see, like you said, all the plants and the glowing mushrooms and all of that. And then the opportunity, I think it was at the end, for some kids to get on the bike and get some photo ops and stuff. So I did get to go to Universal one time and experience that. And
That's great.
It was a blast.
That's great. When I talked to Robert about it, he's never been on the ride.
Oh no.
I was like, well, I guess when you lived it, I guess you don't have to go on the ride. But he told me him and Henry were at a Universal for some kind of press thing in the 90s, and they said, what ride do you want to go on? And they both said Jurassic Park because they were like teenagers at the time. No.
Well, I can kind of understand that. That's a thrill, but come on, you gotta go on the ET ride.
Yeah, it's a classic. It's one of the it's the only opening day attraction that's still at Universal.
No kidding. Wow.
Yeah, supposedly Spielberg has told them, because obviously he pulls a lot of weight at Universal, said you're not getting rid of it. That's what they say anyway. I don't know.
Hey, well, there's smoke where there's fire, or fire where there's smoke.
Yeah. Wow. Well, so this has been great. Thank you so much for sitting down with us and talking all about ET. It's been a great 40th anniversary, and hopefully we're still doing this in 20 more years. Yeah,
well, God willing, we're all around in 20 years, and we'll have this discussion at the 60th anniversary.
Yeah.
We'll see. And I would be the first one there, and I love it. And I just want you to know, there's nothing more I enjoy about having been in ET than be able to have nice conversations like this with people who appreciate it, who are fans, who are aficionados of film and ET, and because it always brings up new stuff for me. Because you don't, your brain doesn't get picked, then you don't remember all these lovely details. So I want to thank you for digging and drilling down on all that.
Well, no problem. You don't me talking about ET is just the normal everyday thing,
right?
Yeah, it's good to I got to talk to other people about it so I don't bug my fiance every day with ET facts. Well, thank you so much, and thank you everybody for watching or listening along with us, and we'll see you in the next one. Thank you so much for tuning in. I want to thank Ruby Mariscal for our amazing artwork and intro animation. And I want to thank Kitty Terry for letting me use her amazing song as our theme music. And I want to thank you for tuning in. And until next time, I'll be right here.